we have to talk about authentication. It's 2026 and it got kinda messy. Middleware got renamed to Proxy and somehow the reason for that is authentication. But where do we place auth checks when not in middleware or now Proxy? And how to make them actually secure but fast? Let's have a look. So this is how we used to do it. A middleware.ts. But as I already said, this got renamed. To clarify our direction, we are renaming the file convention to Proxy. This highlights that we are moving away from middleware, breaking down its overloaded features and making the proxy clear in its purpose. But what is that purpose? It's fast rerouting. So here I'm looking for the user session. I'm using better auth here, but that doesn't matter. You can use your auth solution like Clerk, Supabase, WorkOS. And what we see here is really bad because we are talking to the database. We have an await call here to get the session, and this auth.api actually gets it from our database, so the database session. This is really expensive. It's like 200 milliseconds or maybe even more, and that for every route of your application, or at least however you have configured your matcher down here. And that's why Next.js doesn't want that you do that. They don't want that your page is slow, so you don't go out on X and cry that Next.js is slow because you just misconfigured it. So this proxy file should be lightweight. So you could theoretically just leave it like that, but you shouldn't. So what should you do? You should subscribe to Next.js Weekly, the sponsor of today's video and the best Next.js newsletter. So if you're watching this video, you really need this newsletter because that's where I get all my informations. No matter if news articles out there, news tutorials, projects, packages, tools, just what happened in the world of Next.js. And that all every week right into your inbox. I'm a subscriber since over a year now and I love it. Visit tobymae.dev/nextjsweekly to directly subscribe to it for free, and you can always unsubscribe if you want. Thanks to Erfan from Next.js Weekly for sponsoring this video, and back to our problem. Most of the time your authentication solution has a method, like for example this get session cookie function. This is just getting the session cookie, so it's just looking, hey, is there a session? And this check is actually pretty fast because we don't go to the database to get the actual session, we just look at the cookie and check if there is a cookie. So this is now really fast. It's like maybe 1 or 2 milliseconds. So now we get the session cookie back here, and based on if there is a session cookie, we can redirect the user to the sign-in page or wherever it makes sense. So this is pretty good for routing. Now we did what Next.js wants us to do. This proxy is pretty fast now. But is it secure? It's sadly not. So please, never just check if there is a session cookie, because the big problem here is that anybody just can create that session cookie with the same name with a script, and then he has access to your application. So if proxy.ts is just an optimistic check, where do we actually get our security? Your first thought here might be your page.tsx files, and that makes totally sense. If we look into our page.tsx files, like we have this simple to-do page here, it's doing just some simple caching and getting some to-dos from the database, nothing special. And of course, in every page.tsx file we have, we could now add an authentication check. So for the server side here, for example, we can just get the session like that, import the headers, and make, for example, a redirect if there is no session. This is now a real session lookup, like we're really looking into the session, and we are protecting our whole page with that. But let's imagine that this component here is now its own. So we have a to-do list now, and this to-do list is actually fetching the data. So let's imagine I use this to-do list in different places of my app. So not just in this page TSX, but also in some other routes. I always have to keep in mind that I have to protect my actual pages. But the actual data fetching, the actual thing that should be protected, is usually the server component. So that doesn't seem ideal. Please don't make the mistake of using your layout TSX for authentication. That has tons of reasons why this is not a great idea, because your layout TSX doesn't re-render at all. So you ban a user or delete a user or something like that, but the user still stays logged in, and if their session expires, they can still do everything they want. Okay, so you shouldn't do it in page TSX, because imagine you have a server component that is actually doing the fetch or the mutation or whatever. So should you put it in your server components? That's also problematic because of the same reason. So where should you protect your data? The solution to that is called the DAL, the data access layer. That sounds like a complex thing, and I totally get it, but it actually is not. A layer can pretty much be anything, like just a file that you call dal.ts. For example, you can call that whatever you want. That is really just up to you. And this dal.ts file is now my access layer. So every time I communicate with my database, either if I request some data or I mutate some data, I always go through this DAL. So this would, for example, look like that, where we have this get_to_dos DAL function now, which checks for a session. If there is no session, it maybe throws an error or stuff like that. And then you get the to-dos. And anywhere in your application where you want to access the to-dos, you call this get_to_dos DAL function. You can protect that with linters or any other checks in your CI/CD pipeline. So that way you can secure that anytime data is being fetched, like these to-dos, it's going through the DAL and you are safe. So sketched out, this would look something like this, where you have all your pretty users here, and whenever they want to talk to the DB, you move through the DAL, and this is actually doing the auth check, and then you talk to the DB. So same counts for your server actions, for example. So if you mutate data, you create a to-do, you update a to-do, or you delete a to-do, that always needs to be protected, because server actions are public endpoints and you definitely need to protect them. So as you can see here in my create to-do, I always call the session, and if there's no session, I throw an error. But you know what's the problem of that? It still is slow. Like, okay, for create and update and delete, that's fine. That's adding these 100 or 200 milliseconds for the actual database lookup, but that is needed because it's a public endpoint. But I'm not happy with this one. Like every time you get data, you retrieve data from your database, because that's something that gets called pretty often. Like every time a user goes on your page, data is being fetched. Every time they refresh, data might get fetched. So of course, yes, I could take this away DB select here and put it into our own function and then implement a caching layer there so that this DB call is fast. But still, I can't avoid this one. Like every time the user refreshes, every time he gets new data, I can't cache it because that's a authentication check. And this always adds 200 milliseconds. Every time, everywhere. Yeah, we don't want that. So what is the solution? How do we stay secure but also fast? We have to go back into our Proxy.js. That's now a more advanced example, but it really comes down to this here, the await get cookie cache. Because yes, we have this cookie, and if your authentication solution provides you with a cookie cache, that's awesome, because in Auth you can get the cached cookie, and this cached cookie actually contains your session. So this is actually fast but also safe, because yes, it's an optimistic check, but in Auth everything is encrypted with a Auth secret. So you can't just copy that cookie and change it, because the signature would not match. So this would not work here at all. This is safe and fast, and that's the solution that I use. I still have authentication in actions, you always have to do that, but I don't have them for my fetch calls because I protect everything here with the cookie cache. And now take a deep breath. That was a lot and it was pretty fast. So you might need to rewatch this video to get all the information. Thank you for watching and have a great day.